My parents packed my room while I was on a night shift and texted me, "Your bed belongs to your brother now. Sleep in your car." I was 27 and had paid $350 a month toward their bills for years. On Monday morning, a sheriff knocked on their door with papers that made my mother drop her phone. Down at the dispatch center at 3 in the morning was fluorescent light and low voices and the hum of a ventilation system that had needed a filter change since April. I sat in Bay 4 with my headset on, 2 screens open, the radio crackling between units on patrol in the southern half of the county. My shift ran from 10 at night to 7 in the morning, 5 days a week, and I had been doing it for 4 years. The coffee in my thermos was cold. The log sheet for the night showed 14 calls since midnight. 2 domestics, a fender bender on Route 9, a welfare check, and the rest were noise complaints from the same apartment complex that called every weekend. I was good at this job, not because it was easy, but because it required the one skill I had been building since I was 15, staying calm while someone else's emergency filled the room. You learn to separate the voice in your ear from the voice in your chest. You learn to type while someone is screaming. You learn that documentation is not paperwork. It is the difference between a deputy arriving with the right information and a deputy arriving blind. I earned $48,200 a year, and I had never missed a shift. My phone buzzed at 3:07 a.m. I was mid-call relaying a unit number to a deputy responding to a trespassing report at a storage facility on the county line. I glanced down. My mother's name. The text was 4 sentences. "We packed your room tonight. Your bed belongs to your brother now. Garrett needs the space. Sleep in your car or find somewhere else." I read it twice while the deputy on the radio confirmed his arrival at the storage lot. I read it a third time during the silence between transmissions. Then I screenshotted it, saved it to a folder I had labeled Family on my phone's home screen, and went back to work. If you're new here, welcome to Betrayal Unfolded. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. I finished the shift. 7 hours is a long time to sit in a chair and answer emergency calls when the phone in your pocket holds a text message that cancels the only bed you have. But I had spent 4 years learning how to separate what was happening on the radio from what was happening in my chest, and I used every minute of that training between 3:07 and 7 a.m. I drove home at 7:15. The morning was overcast, the kind of October gray that sits flat against the rooftops and does not move. I turned onto Seneca Street and saw the garbage bags before I reached the driveway. 4 black bags on the front porch, leaned against the railing like something put out for collection day. The front door was closed. The porch light was off. Through the living room window, I could see cardboard boxes, Garrett's handwriting on the sides in black marker, stacked along the wall where my bookshelf used to be. A pillow that was not mine sat on the couch. A pair of boots I did not recognize was kicked off near the door. I parked and walked to the porch. I did not knock. I unzipped the first bag. Clothes, folded roughly but not carefully, half of them inside out. My work uniform was crumpled at the bottom with a boot print on the sleeve. The second bag had shoes. My alarm clock with the cord wrapped around it so tightly the plug had bent, and 2 framed photos laid face down on top of a winter coat. The frames were the ones I had hung on my wall since I was 17. One of me and Dorothy at a county fair, one of me and Isla at graduation. The glass on Dorothy's frame had a hairline crack from the packing. The third bag had books, a desk lamp, and at the very bottom, wrapped in a pillowcase that was not mine, my grandmother's jewelry box. The hinge was cracked. One side of the lid sat higher than the other. I opened it and the music mechanism tried to play, but caught on the misalignment and stopped after 3 notes. Dorothy had given me that box when I was 12. Her hands had been thin and her voice had been steady, and she had said, "Every girl needs a place for the things that matter." She died 13 months later. The box had sat on my nightstand for 15 years. Now it was in a garbage bag with a cracked hinge and a pillowcase I did not recognize. I almost walked into that house. My hand was already on the screen door handle, but a call came through on my phone, the dispatch center's automated shift confirmation for Monday, and the beep was the same beep I heard 200 times a night in my headset. It pulled me back into the part of myself that documented before it reacted. I set the jewelry box on the hood of my car. Then I went back to the porch and photographed every bag, every item, every angle. 136 photos, each one time-stamped by the phone's camera. I did not leave a note. I did not ring the bell. I loaded the bags into my trunk and drove to Isla's apartment. She opened the door at 8:10 in a bathrobe with wet hair. She looked at my face, looked past me at the car and stepped aside. "Guest rooms made," she said. "We'll figure it out in the morning." It was already morning, but I knew what she meant. She meant, don't decide anything right now. I carried the bags to the guest room and sat on the bed. I opened the jewelry box again. The hinge caught. The music did not play. The small mirror inside the lid showed my face in the low light, and I closed it and set it on the nightstand and did not open it again until everything was over. Isla came in at noon with 2 mugs of coffee and a box of crackers because she knew I had not eaten since midnight. She set the mug on the nightstand next to the jewelry box and sat across from me on the chair by the window. She did not say anything for a full minute. She looked at the bags on the floor. She looked at the jewelry box with its cracked hinge. She looked at me. "I have watched them do this to you for 10 years, she said. "The money, the guilt, the way your mom calls you when Garrett needs something and never when you do. The way your dad sits in his chair and says nothing while she rearranges the whole house around your brother. I've watched you pay $350 a month and tell yourself it was fair. It was never fair, and I'm not watching you go back." "I'm not going back." "Good." She picked up her mug. "Then we figure out what you do instead." "I need to understand something first. The $350, where it was going." "I thought it was for their bills." "So did I." What I did instead started with a credit report. I pulled it at 2 that afternoon from my laptop on Isla's kitchen table. I expected the usual lines: my car loan, my credit card, the student loan from the 2 semesters of community college I had managed before the $350 monthly payments to my parents made tuition impossible. There was a 4th line I had never seen: co-borrower, residential mortgage, originating lender, Central Prairie Federal Credit Union, originated 8 years ago. Original loan amount, $198,000. Current balance, $162,400. Property address, 412 Seneca Street. My parents' house. I was on the mortgage. I sat very still. The coffee went cold next to my laptop. Isla was at the salon until 4. The apartment was silent except for the refrigerator cycling on and the neighbor's television, playing something with a laugh track through the wall. 8 years ago, I was 19. My mother had sat me down at the kitchen table on a Tuesday after dinner, the dishes still in the sink, and placed a stack of papers and a pen in front of me. "We're refinancing the house to get a better rate," she had said. "We need a co-signer because Dad's credit took a hit from that medical bill. It's just a signature, sweetheart. It won't affect you at all." She had pointed to the signature line. She had not pointed to the loan amount, the interest rate, the disbursement schedule, or the section that explained what co-borrower meant. I had signed because she was my mother and I was 19, and I did not understand that just a signature could mean $198,000 of liability. The $350 I had been paying every month since then was not helping with bills. It was a mortgage payment. I had been paying a portion of the mortgage on a house that I was legally listed on as co-borrower for 8 years, while believing I was contributing to utilities and groceries. I opened the county recorder's public property portal and typed in the address. The deed loaded in 4 seconds. Two names, Carl Collier and Bryn Collier. I was on the deed. I was a co-owner of the house my parents had just locked me out of. They had packed my room and texted me to sleep in my car, and I owned part of the building they had emptied. I almost closed the laptop and drove back to Seneca Street. My car keys were already in my hand. But the jewelry box was sitting on the guest room nightstand through the open door, lid crooked, mirror catching a sliver of afternoon light, and Dorothy's voice came back to me. Every girl needs a place for the things that matter. The things that mattered right now were on the screen, not on Seneca Street. I opened a new spreadsheet. Then I opened my bank app and started scrolling. 96 payments, $350 each, every month for 8 years. Total, $33,600. Every payment was a Venmo transfer to my mother's account. Every transfer had a timestamp. Everyone was still in my transaction history. I screenshotted all 96. Then I pulled the bank statements from the last 3 years, the furthest back my online portal went, and highlighted every $350 line in yellow. By evening, I had a file. By Sunday morning, I had a plan. Isla's cousin had used a real estate attorney 2 years earlier for a boundary dispute. The attorney's name was Janet Avery. Her office was in a converted Victorian house on the east side of town. I called her emergency line at 10 on Sunday morning and described the situation in under 3 minutes. She agreed to meet me Monday at 6 a.m. before the courthouse opened. If this story is hitting close to home, you're not alone. Subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Janet Avery wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and had a framed law degree from a school I had never heard of and a desk covered in color-coded folders. She opened my binder at 6:15 on Monday morning and read for 9 minutes without speaking. She looked up. "Where did you learn to organize a case file like this?" "I'm a 911 dispatcher. I document calls for a living." "This is the most organized file I've opened in 15 years. She closed the binder. "Here's what we're filing. First, an emergency petition for illegal lockout of a property co-owner. Second, a LI's pendens. That's a public notice placed on the property title that tells any buyer, lender, or title company that there is an active legal claim. It freezes the house. Nothing sells, nothing refinances, nothing transfers until the court resolves your claim. Third, a civil complaint for credit fraud. They put you on a mortgage at 19 without meaningful disclosure. You were told it was just a signature. That is not informed consent. How fast can the emergency petition move? I'll have the judge's signature by 9:30. The sheriff's office will serve it by 10. I knew she was right. I had dispatched deputies to serve papers hundreds of times. I knew the process, the timeline, the route the patrol car would take to Seneca Street. The judge signed the emergency order at 9:22 a.m. The LI's pendens was recorded with the county clerk at 9:41. The civil complaint was filed at 9:55. At 10:14 a.m., a deputy I had dispatched on calls at least 40 times drove up Seneca Street in a marked cruiser and pulled into my parents' driveway. I was not there. I did not need to be. I had dispatched papers to hundreds of addresses over 4 years. I knew exactly what happened when a deputy walked to a front door with an envelope in his hand. I knew the knock. I knew the pause. I knew the look on the face of the person who opened the door and saw the county seal. My mother opened the door in a bathrobe. She was holding her phone in her right hand, mid-conversation with someone whose voice I could imagine but did not hear. The deputy introduced himself. He handed her the envelope. She opened it standing in the doorway with the phone still pressed to her ear. She read the first page. The emergency petition for illegal lockout of a property co-owner. She turned to the second. The lis pendens notice. The document that froze the house. Her name was at the top. My name was on the third line. The property address. The words pending legal action and no transfer, sale, or encumbrance may proceed. She turned to the third page. The civil complaint for credit fraud and breach of fiduciary disclosure. Her phone slipped from her hand. It hit the porch floor screen first and the call disconnected with a sound like a small crack. She did not bend down. She did not pick it up. She stood in the doorway with the papers in one hand and the other hand empty and open at her side. The deputy returned to his car. He logged the service at 10:17 a.m. I know this because I saw the entry in the dispatch system when I came in for my shift that night. The address was familiar. The timestamp was exact. The deputy's notes read, "Served. Recipient opened envelope at door. No verbal response." Janet's subpoenas went out Monday afternoon. By Thursday, the lender's response arrived. The full refinance origination file from 8 years ago. The original mortgage had a remaining balance of $151,000. The refinance was for $198,000 at a slightly lower rate. The difference, $47,000, was disbursed as a cash-out payment to a checking account in my mother's name. I sat in Janet's office and watched her trace the money. Within 60 days of the refinance closing, $18,000 had been wired from Denise's checking account to a Visa collections department. The account holder on the Visa, Garrett Collier. Another $12,000 went to a business loan servicer for a landscaping company registered under Garrett's name. The company had been dissolved 9 months later with $0 in revenue. $30,000 of the $47,000 cash out went directly to my brother's debts, $18,000 for his credit cards, $12,000 for a business that never mowed a single lawn. The remaining $17,000 was listed on the refinance application as home improvements. Janet pulled the county permit records for 412 Seneca Street. No building permits had been filed in the last 8 years. No contractor invoices appeared in Denise's financial records. No improvements had been made. The $17,000 traced through bank statements produced under the court order to a combination of $6,400 in credit card payments, also Garrett's, a $3,800 family vacation to Branson that I was not invited to, $2,100 in furniture for the living room, and the rest in cash withdrawals with no documentation at all. Not $1 had been spent on the house. The home improvements line on the refinance application was a fabrication. My credit at 19 had been the qualifying score. My parents' combined credit was too damaged for the refinance without a co-borrower. They used my 740 score to secure the loan, took out $47,000 in equity, sent $30,000 to Garrett, spent $17,000 on vacations and furniture, and more of Garrett's debt, and then charged me $350 a month to pay for the privilege of living in a house I co-owned, while they told me I was helping with bills. I had dropped out of community college at 20 because I could not afford tuition and $350 a month at the same time. I'd been enrolled in a criminal justice program. My advisor had said I was one of the strongest students in the cohort. My mother had said, "Education will always be there. Family needs you now." I had chosen family. Family had chosen Garrett. The $12,000 that went to his landscaping company, the company that never mowed a single lawn, would have covered my remaining tuition and books with money left over. Everything reframed. Not once, twice. But Janet found something else in the subpoenaed records, something that explained the timing, something I had not been looking for. A listing agreement, dated 3 weeks before the night my parents packed my room. Agent, a broker from a local firm. Listing price, $289,000. Expected closing, 6 weeks from listing date. My parents were selling the house. They had accepted an offer. The buyer's title search was scheduled. When that search ran, it would find my name on the deed. A co-owner who had not signed the listing agreement, had not consented to the sale, and had not been notified. The room packing was not about Garrett needing space. It was not about me being 27. It was not about inconvenience. It was the first step in a sequence. Remove me from the house. Wait until I was settled somewhere else. Present a quitclaim deed as a formality. Have me sign away my ownership interest the same way I had signed onto the mortgage at 19, without understanding what I was giving up. then close the sale, collect $289,000, move on as if I had never been on the deed at all. The Lispendines killed it. The title company flagged the filing within 24 hours of recording. The buyer's attorney called Denise the same afternoon. The offer was suspended pending resolution of the ownership claim. The closing date 6 weeks out became meaningless. The listing agent called twice. Denise did not answer the second time. On Thursday evening, I drove to Seneca Street. I did not call ahead. I parked in the driveway and stayed beside my car, the same car they had told me to sleep in. Carl came out first. He stood on the porch with his hands in his pockets and did not speak. Denise came out behind him. She stopped at the top of the steps. "You need to remove that filing," she said. "You are destroying this family over paperwork." "The paperwork has my name on it. So does the deed. So does the mortgage." "That was a formality. You were helping the family." "I was paying $350 a month into a loan I didn't know I had co-signed for 8 years, $33,600. You lived in this house for free." "I lived in this house as a co-owner paying the mortgage. That is not free. Your father and I made that decision together, and we are selling this house together. You are not part of this." "I'm on the deed, Mom. I'm on the mortgage. I am literally part of this." "The sale is going through." "No, it isn't. The Lispendines freezes the property. Nothing moves until the court says it moves. Your buyer's attorney already knows. The offer is suspended." Denise's voice dropped. "You are going to regret this." "I regretted signing that paper at 19. Everything since then has been documentation." Carl shifted on the porch. He looked at Denise. She did not look back. He looked at me, and for 1 second I saw something in his face that might have been recognition, or might have been exhaustion, or might have been the nearest thing to an apology. A man who has never apologized can produce without opening his mouth. Garrett appeared in the window behind them. He raised one hand, palm out, like he was waving from behind glass. He did not come outside. He had not come outside for any of this. He had not packed the bags or written the text or made the call or filed the refinance. He had received. That was his role. That had always been his role. I almost walked up those steps. My foot was on the first tread. But Janet's folder was in the bag on my passenger seat, the weight of it visible through the open car door, and I thought about what Isla had said. "I'm not watching you go back." I stepped off the tread and stood next to my car and said nothing else. Denise went inside. Carl stood on the porch for another 30 seconds, then followed. I drove back to Isla's. 10 days later, I walked into the fellowship hall at Grace Community Church. The annual dinner was Denise's event. She ran the hospitality committee. She organized the seating, approved the menu, arranged the centerpieces. 31 people were seated. The pastor was at the head table. The worship team sat along the left wall. 5 hospitality volunteers were serving dessert. Denise was at the center of the long table, napkin in her lap, water glass full. She saw me from across the room. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. I walked to the front of the hall and stood where the committee usually made announcements. I opened the folder I had carried in my bag for 10 days. My name is on the deed to 412 Seneca Street. It has been there for 8 years. I was put on the mortgage as a co-borrower when I was 19 years old. I was told it was just a signature. I read without inflection, the way I logged calls. The refinance pulled out $47,000 in equity. $30,000 of that was wired to my brother's creditors within 60 days. $18,000 for credit card debt. $12,000 for a landscaping company that closed in 9 months with 0 revenue. The remaining $17,000 was listed as home improvements. No permits were filed. No contractors were hired. No improvements were made. The room had gone completely still. A hospitality volunteer set down a dessert plate without placing it in front of anyone. I have paid $350 per month for 96 months, $33,600 total. Every payment is documented. Every Venmo transfer is screenshotted. Every bank statement is highlighted. 3 weeks ago, My parents listed the house for sale at $289,000 without notifying me, the co-owner. When I was at work on a Friday night shift, they packed my room, gave it to my brother, and texted me at 3 a.m. to sleep in my car. Denise's face tightened. Her voice rose and carried across the fellowship hall in a register that did not match the centerpieces or the dessert plates or the program folded at every place setting. You are 27 years old. You work the graveyard shift, answering 911 calls that anyone with a headset could take. You have never had a relationship last longer than 6 months. You lived in a twin bed in your childhood room until last Saturday, and the only reason you could afford to stay is because we let you. Your brother has a degree. He built a business. He had a woman who loved him. You had a spare key and a night shift. That $350 was the least you could do for the roof we put over your head for 27 years. And you want to stand here in my church and call yourself a victim because we finally gave your baby room to an adult. Nobody moved. The pastor set down his fork. A woman from the worship team closed her program. The volunteer who had been holding the dessert plate put it on the nearest table and stepped back. I did not raise my voice. I did not step closer to the table. I stood where the committee usually made announcements and spoke the way I spoke on the radio, level, precise, one fact at a time. 8 years ago, you sat me down at the kitchen table and handed me a pen and told me to sign. I was 19. I did not know what a co-borrower was. I did not know I was taking on $198,000 in mortgage liability. You used my credit score, which was 740, to qualify for a refinance you could not get on your own because Dad's score was below 600. You took out $47,000 in cash equity. You gave $30,000 of it to Garrett, $18,000 for his credit card debt, $12,000 for a landscaping company that was dissolved 9 months later with zero revenue and zero clients. You told me $350 a month was helping with bills. It was a mortgage payment on a loan you put my name on without explaining what it meant. That is credit fraud. That is breach of disclosure. That is illegal eviction of a titled co-owner. I turned the page. My attorney filed an emergency petition, a ELES pendens, and a civil complaint. The house cannot be sold, refinanced, or transferred until the court resolves my claim. The listing at $289,000 is suspended. The buyer has been notified, and every document I just described is in this folder, with copies already filed with the court. Denise's hands went flat on the table. Her napkin slid off her lap to the floor. She pushed back from the table and her knee hit the table leg. The water glasses rattled. 2 of them tipped. Water ran across the white tablecloth toward the centerpiece. She looked at the pastor. He was looking at his plate. Garrett stood from his chair 3 seats down. His face was pale. This is a family matter. It does not belong in a church. You made it a church matter when you put Mom on the hospitality committee and me in a car. I'll pay you back. The $30,000. I'll work something out. Just give me time. With what? You've been fired from 3 jobs in 2 years. The landscaping company lasted 9 months with 0 clients. The degree Mom talks about is in business administration, and you haven't used it once since you graduated. You owe $4,200 in dissolution fees. Your credit score is 511. You cannot get approved for a personal loan, and you are asking me for time. Dad, say something. Tell her this is not what it looks like. Carl opened his mouth, closed it, picked up his water glass, set it down without drinking. He looked at the tablecloth where the water was still spreading from the tipped glasses and did not look up again. He had been silent for 8 years. He was silent now. Silence was his only skill, and he had perfected it. You said I had a spare key and a night shift, I said, looking at Denise. That spare key opens a house with my name on the deed. That night shift paid the mortgage that kept your roof standing for 8 years. The girl who answered phones is the reason you are sitting in this building tonight instead of a rental unit. The son with the degree cost you $30,000 in cash-out equity that you took on my credit. So before you call my room a baby room, remember whose name is on the paper that says it is mine. The hospitality volunteer nearest the door untied her apron and hung it on the back of her chair. She did not sit back down. I answered phones and paid your mortgage for 8 years. The son with the degree cost you $30,000. Tell me who needed the roof. Denise's chin dropped. Her hands were still flat on the table. The water from the tipped glasses had reached the edge and was dripping onto her lap, and she did not move. This is the last month I pay someone else's mortgage. The last time I answer a call that starts with what Garrett needs. The last time I carry a key to a house where I'm not wanted. I closed the folder. I walked out of the fellowship hall. I did not turn around. In the parking lot, an older woman named Frances, who had attended Grace Community for 23 years and had known my grandmother Dorothy, followed me out. She put her hand on my arm and said, "Dorothy would have done the same thing." She walked to her car. She did not go back inside. The sale collapsed within a week. The buyer's attorney withdrew the offer after the title company confirmed the Ellis pendants. Denise's listing agent suspended the agreement. The house sat on the market with an active legal claim attached to its title, and no buyer willing to wait for resolution. Janet filed a motion for a full accounting of the refinance proceeds. The court ordered Denise to produce 3 years of bank records. The $17,000 in home improvements traced to a combination of credit card payments, a vacation to Branson, and 2 months of Garrett's car insurance. No hammer had been lifted. No wall had been painted. Carl's warehouse scheduled him for reduced hours in January. Whether that was coincidence or consequence, the result was the same. His take-home dropped from $3,100 to $2,200 a month, and the mortgage payment without my $350 contribution was $1,330. The electric bill, the water, the insurance, the property tax escrow added another $680. They had $90 left for groceries, gas, and everything else. They had never budgeted without my money. For 8 years, $350 had arrived every month like a utility they never questioned. Now the utility was off and the bills were the same, and Denise sat at the kitchen table on the first of every month with a calculator and a stack of envelopes and made choices she had never had to make when I was paying. Garrett's landscaping business owed $4,200 in dissolution fees that had been deferred and were now in collections. His credit score was 511. He applied for a personal loan to cover his first and last month's rent at the friend's basement. The application was denied. He borrowed $800 from a coworker at the restaurant where he was now bussing tables for $13.50 an hour. He had not called me once since the fellowship dinner. He had not called Denise either. The golden child was in a basement, bussing tables, borrowing money from strangers. The degree in business administration sat in a frame in a closet he shared with the friend's water heater. Garrett moved out of my old room 6 weeks after the filing, not voluntarily. His name was not on the deed, and Janet's motion to restrict occupancy to titled owners during litigation made his presence a legal liability. He moved to a friend's basement in a town 20 minutes south. He took the boxes with his name on them. He left the room empty. No bed, no bookshelf, no photos on the wall. Just 4 hooks where my frames had been, and a rectangle of darker paint where my headboard once sat. The church hospitality committee asked Denise to step down from the annual dinner planning for the following year. The request was made privately by the committee chair, a woman named Lorraine who had co-organized the Easter breakfast with Denise for 9 consecutive years. The conversation lasted 4 minutes in the church office on a Wednesday afternoon. Lorraine said the committee felt it was best if Denise took a step back. Denise said she understood. She did not ask why. She knew why. Everyone in the fellowship hall that night knew why. She did not attend the next 2 Sunday services. When she returned, she sat in the back row instead of her usual 3rd row seat on the center aisle. The pastor greeted her by name at the door the way he greeted everyone. Nobody else spoke to her before the service started. Nobody avoided her with visible hostility. They simply treated her the way you treat someone whose story you now know, with distance dressed up as politeness. 3 members of the congregation who had been at the dinner stopped calling. 2 of them had been in Denise's Bible study group for 6 years. The group continued without her. No one said she was removed. She simply was not included in the new text chain when the semester schedule changed. The third member, a woman who had brought a casserole when Carl had his gallbladder surgery, left a voicemail saying she needed some space from everything right now. She did not define everything. She did not need to. 3 weeks after the church dinner, Denise appeared at Isla's apartment. She knocked at 7 in the evening. She was wearing the same blouse she wore to church, the blue one with the pearl buttons, and she had put on lipstick, which she only did when she wanted to be taken seriously. Isla answered. Denise asked to speak to me. Isla looked over her shoulder. I nodded. Isla stepped aside but did not leave the hallway. I came to the door. I want you to know, Denise said, her voice measured, rehearsed, the way she spoke at committee meetings, that if you do not withdraw the filing by Friday, I will go to the police and report that jewelry and electronics were stolen from the house during your move-out. I have a list. Your grandmother's ring, the portable speaker from the kitchen, the iPad your father bought for the house. I will tell them you took things that did not belong to you, and the police will believe a mother over a girl sleeping on a friend's couch. I opened my phone, pulled up the photo gallery, scrolled to the folder labeled Move Out, 136 images. Every item I had taken from every bag, photographed on Isla's guest room floor, each frame time-stamped within an hour of leaving Seneca Street. Clothes, books, alarm clock, lamp, 2 framed photos, grandmother's jewelry box, nothing that was not mine, nothing that belonged to the house. I held the phone screen out so she could see the grid, row after row of time-stamped evidence. Then I set the phone face up on the small shelf beside Isla's door. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the spare house key I had carried since I was 16. The key Denise had mentioned in her own words. You had a spare key and a night shift. I set it next to the phone. I stepped back. I closed the door. Through the peephole, I watched her stand there for 8 seconds. She looked at the phone. She looked at the key. She picked up neither. She turned and walked to her car and sat in the driver's seat for 4 minutes before she started the engine. Denise went back to Seneca Street that night. She walked into my old room, Garrett's room, the room that was now empty. She sat on the edge of the bare mattress that had been pushed against the wall when Garrett moved his things out. The wall had 4 hooks where my photos had hung and a rectangle of lighter paint where the headboard had been. She had painted over the nail holes with a sample pot from the hardware store the week after the bags went on the porch. The color did not match. It was close, but not exact. And in the afternoon light, the patches were visible. 4 pale circles on a cream wall, like scars that had been covered but not healed. Garrett's boxes were gone. His things were gone. The room smelled like latex paint and dust and something she could not name, which was absence. She picked up her phone, scrolled to my name, typed 3 words, deleted them, typed 2 more, deleted those, set the phone face down on the mattress, sat there until the light through the window moved from the wall to the floor and the room went gray. In December, the court confirmed my co-ownership interest. The judge reviewed the refinance origination documents, the payment history, the credit disclosure failure, and the civil fraud claim. She ruled that my $33,600 in documented payments, combined with my status as a titled co-owner who had never been properly informed of the loan terms, established a substantial equity interest in the property. The court ordered a settlement. I would receive $64,000 representing my proportional equity based on payments, credit contribution, and 8 years of co-ownership. Denise and Carl would retain the house but were required to refinance the mortgage in their names only within 90 days. Without my credit score, the new interest rate was 2.3 points higher than the original. Their monthly payment increased by $410, from $1,430 to $1,840. Janet also filed a formal complaint with the State Consumer Protection Office regarding the original refinance disclosure. The investigation was ongoing when I signed my lease. Janet said these cases move slowly, but they move. The $64,000 arrived by wire transfer on a Thursday in January. I sat at Isla's kitchen table and watched the number appear in my account. It was the first time in 8 years that a financial transaction involving my parents' house had moved money toward me instead of away from me. In late January, I signed a 12-month lease on a first-floor apartment on the east side of town. One bedroom with a window that faced a row of maple trees, a kitchen with a window over the sink, and a bathroom with a door that locked. The first month's rent was $875, paid with money that used to go to a mortgage I had never chosen. Isla's uncle repaired the jewelry box hinge in his workshop. He sanded the crack, reset the pin, and oiled the mechanism. When he handed it back, the lid closed flush, and the music played all the way through for the first time in 3 months. On a Saturday morning in late January, I unpacked the last box. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and the lemon cleaner Isla had used when she helped me move in. The furniture was secondhand, most of it from a church donation center 2 blocks from the courthouse. But every piece was mine, and every piece was chosen, and every piece fit. I set the jewelry box on the nightstand and opened the lid. The small mirror caught the light from the window. The folk melody played, the same notes Dorothy had wound for me when I was 12, and the box was new and the hinge was whole. And I did not yet know what co-borrower meant or what it cost to trust someone who handed you a pen and called it nothing. On the kitchen counter sat the lease agreement, one name on the signature line, mine, no co-signer. No co-borrower, no fine print I had not read. The rent was $875 a month, and it went to a landlord who gave me a receipt and a key and did not ask me to be grateful. I wound the key, the song played, and the room was mine. Thank you for watching. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to Betrayal Unfolded, hit the bell, and leave a comment telling me if you've ever had to cut off family to protect your own. I'll see you in the next one.